Hey everyone, this is Turd Flinging Monkey, and today we're going to talk a little bit more about the political trichotomy. I was having a conversation with someone, and they were asking me about species of animals. Like, what is this species, communist or absolutist? Or he wanted to know what type of species represents absolutism. So we had a conversation, and based on that conversation, this video was inspired. And actually, this really solidifies and backs up the system that I've talked about, which I call responsibilitism. But I'm actually thinking about changing the name because responsibilitism is a little bit esoteric, cumbersome, not natural. I think I'm going to change it. We'll talk about that later. But the animal kingdom is extremely important because we talk about, social constructs and so forth. When you look at animals, you strip all the bullshit away. Animals have no government. They have no money. They have no religion. All these things that people want to blame for everything, you can strip all that away and you just look at what animals do to survive and what works and what doesn't work. And you can look at nature and it really kind of just clarifies things. It just clears out all the bullshit. Okay, so let's talk about species and systems which are analogous to communism, absolutism, and individualism. And the first question you're probably going to have is, yeah, but which one works for humans? I'll get to that in a minute. So let's talk about communism. So basically, and I'm talking about like real communism, not the when you try to implement communism in humans and it becomes a totalitarian dictatorship, but the actual governmentless kind of, for the greater good type of communism, real communism. You actually see this in animals and species which use like a hive system. So like ants, bees, so on and so forth. Think about it. You have lots of workers who go for the greater good. There's no money. Workers in the bee colony or the ant colony, they work, they come back, they do all the work, and yet they share their food and the fruits of their labor with the entire colony. There's division of labor, there's hierarchy, but everybody works for the good of the hive. The differentiation between the individual and the hive is non-existent. The individual is the hive, and the hive is the individual. So this would be the perfect communist society. This is the ideal communist society. There's no money, there's no self-interest, everybody's working together for the greater good. Next, let's talk about individualism. So individualism, this is also the basis of capitalism. This is best represented by solitary animals. Animals like bears, eagles, stuff like that. So the key thing about individualist, solitary animals is they don't like being around members of their own kind. They like to be off on their own. They often have fierce competition within their own species, and so they don't form large groups. And this is the basis of capitalism. Think about it. In America or any capitalist society, there's fierce competition between companies within the same country, let alone the same system. And this type of competition means that even within a free society, with all kinds of people that more or less are on the same page, they believe in the same values, they're also always out to get each other. They're always out to, whatever. Now, the good news about individualist solitary animals is they are basically apex predators. And they don't even require, large groups to do it. Solitary individuals animals make up some of the biggest, strongest, meanest, nastiest animals that ever existed. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of these animals make it on the insignia of nations and empires. Because when you see the power of these individualist animals, and that they don't need a big pack or a hive to command power, just individually, they are a force to be reckoned with. It's very inspiring. So what animal represents absolutism? Well, I believe, this is a little bit harder to pin down, and I'll talk about why in a minute, but I believe that any animal which forms small communities is effectively K-selected. If you don't know what our K-selection theory is, effectively, our selection is having lots of kids but not really giving a shit what happens to them, just having them kind of set and forget. K-selection involves a lot of parental investment, monogamy, so on and so forth. A lot of K-selected animals that form small groups, I would say, are analogous to the absolutism side. And now this is where we get to the kind of the meat of the conversation. So things like wolves, lions, tigers, stuff like that. That would be absolutist. In fact, Absolutism is all about kings and monarchs, and the lion is the king of the jungle. So it even has king in the thing. Now, where do humans fall? Where do humans fall? I would argue, now don't jump down my throat. I'll tell you and then let me explain. I would say that humans fall closest to absolutism, naturally. If you look at chimpanzee troops, even bonobo groups to some extent, they're far more analogous to wolf packs, lion prides, than they are to bears and eagles or bees and ants. So if you want to think as a species, the way humans evolved, absolutism is closest to human nature. And this is even confirmed when you look back on the entirety of human history. If you look at all the way back from the dawn of human civilization and writing and records, what do you see? You see millennia of kings, emperors. These are basically absolutist forms of government. So for, 90+% of human history, humanity lived under the authority of an absolutist style government, which is why those who value stability are absolutists. Stability is the highest value of the absolutist, whereas equality is that of the communist and freedom is that of the individualist. So if you just want to take the ecological argument, then absolutism makes the most sense for humans as a system, but there's a caveat, there's a huge caveat. So here's the thing. In actual animal species that have these types of small communities, the case-selected species, wolves, lions, and so forth, these species have a meritocratic hierarchy. The alpha of the chimpanzee troop or the alpha lion or whatever, the leader of the group can be overthrown by whoever's the most capable. The one who's better at getting a coalition or the biggest and the strongest, the alpha can be overthrown. Now, in human societies with kings and dictators and whatnot, they don't like that. They don't like being overthrown. They don't like meritocracy. So in human society, actual kings, dictators, oligarchs, whatever, they put up barriers to keep people from rising up and threatening them. So even though chimpanzees, lions, and tigers are more closer to humans than bees or ants or eagles and bears, absolutism, in a strict sense, how we understand it in the political trichotomy, is not natural because it's missing the meritocracy. If we want to start with nature, then the compromise is actually in between individualism and absolutism. From individualism, we have the competition, which is why, individualists, the downfall of individual societies is they're too small, they're too competitive, and it's very easy to divide and conquer an individualist society. Now, what's interesting is if we had a compromise system somewhere between individualism and absolutism, based on the ideas of Darwinism, again, returning to nature, and you had a meritocratic oligarchy. I think that's what I'm going to change the whole responsibilitism model to, something along the lines of a meritocratic oligarchy. You have the hierarchy, you have the stratification. However, there is mobility. You can go from one to the other. You can be born in the upper class and descend into the lower class, or you can be born into the lower class and break into the upper class. If people feel like they have a chance to break into the upper class, they're not going to want to necessarily burn down the whole system. Now, the dipshits at the bottom, they're going to want to burn down the whole system because they lost. And in their resentment, they're going to have this, if I can't have it, no one can attitude. But, we deal with that as they come up. Now, there are minority groups within humanity which may actually be a bit closer to individualism or communism than I'm giving them credit for. There have been small communities of people living in communes, for example. There are people who like to live in the mountains by themselves, like solitary hermits, who you can say are analogous to individualist solitary animals. So I think for humanity as a whole, I think they would thrive best under a meritocratic, hierarchical oligarchy, a kind of compromise between individualism and absolutism. However, I think there also needs to be kind of an understanding and a tolerance for the people who actually would thrive better under a more communistic system or individual system. They need to be allowed to live the lifestyle that suits them. And as long as it doesn't impose on anyone else, it really shouldn't be a problem. I'm not saying we get rid of technology and go back to burning shit for warmth. What I'm saying is, when it comes to the organization of society, we need to start with nature and what humans evolved to be, and then build off of that. Instead of having pie-in-the-sky utopian fantasies about what we would like humans to be, and then trying to impose that at the barrel of a gun. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. This is Turd Flinging Monkey. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. 13 Rules to Not Be a Fucking Cuck is my latest book, and my greatest book. My previous works have been mostly comedy, satire, parody. This is a book I didn't just do for the lulz and because it was funny, but actually because I think it will make a difference and will help people. We live in a world with a lot of different competing ideologies, individuals, organizations, everything you could think of, trying to subvert your life for its purpose. Everybody has a plan for your life and they don't care what yours is. But if you don't stand up for your life, about what you want to do with your life, somebody else is going to make that decision for you. So don't be a cuck. Check out 13 Rules to Not Be a Fucking Cuck on Amazon and Amazon Kindle. Links in the description.